So I think size-wise, we can get comfortable with it. And I think experience-wise, Jake is learning very fast and growing, and Joshua is a little long in the tooth. So it could be a very interesting matchup, and we're actively discussing it with Matchroom. I think we're looking at it happening in Q1 of 2026 is kind of the current discussion. I think it's public that AJ was taking a little time away. I think he had a little surgery.
I think the fight's a mismatch. I think AJ destroys him.
Anything's possible. And so I like the challenge. People, that's the criticism. Fight someone in their prime who's a beast. I think people just want to see me lose. That's really what the message is behind it all. And Anthony Joshua is an insane fight, but I want that challenge. We've been DMing back and forth. He wants to make it happen.
Like, I can't believe it. You can't make me believe that Anthony Joshua is gonna fight Jake Paul. Like, why?
Jake Paul's manager just dropped a bombshell that's got the entire boxing world buzzing. According to Nakisa Badarian, the fight between Jake Paul and former world heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua is not only possible, it's actively being discussed.
I think the fight can absolutely happen. I'm looking at it as Jake versus Joshua, which is quite biblical and it's quite impactful in many ways. If you look at Anthony Joshua, I think he is 28-4, if I'm not mistaken, and 2 of his losses are against Alexander Usyk. Usyk weighed in at 220 pounds for those fights. Jake is not Usyk, a lot more years of experience needed to get to that level, but Jake walks around between 208 and 210, and he fought Mike Tyson at 228 pounds. So I think size-wise, we can get comfortable with it, and I think experience-wise, Jake is learning very fast and growing, and Joshua is a little long in the tooth. So it could be a very interesting matchup, and we're actively discussing it with Matchroom.
Badarian confidently stated that the matchup could realistically happen, with early 2026 being the target date. He believes the fight is both biblical and impactful, and despite the obvious size and experience gap between the two, he says Jake Paul is learning fast and that the gap isn't as wide as people think. The venue being looked at? Wembley Stadium. Imagine 90,000 fans screaming, most of them booing Jake Paul, and he actually wants that. Paul, who's never been shy of the spotlight, seems to be chasing a fight that could be one of the biggest spectacles in recent boxing history.
I think we're looking at it happening in Q1 of 2026 is kind of the current discussion. I think it's public that AJ was taking a little time away. I think he had a little surgery. So once he's ready and once Jake is ready, we're gonna squarely focus on that. I think we're looking at multiple options. Wembley's definitely a possibility. Jake has said he'd like to do it there. He likes the idea of going in and hearing 90,000 people booing him. He kind of feeds off of that. But we're looking at the US. Obviously, Saudi Arabia is also an option. The Middle East is an option as a whole. But we want to do it in the most impactful way possible.
Badarian isn't too worried about the size difference either. He said that Jake walks around at about 208 to 210 pounds, and when he fought Mike Tyson, he was up to 228 pounds. Joshua, who fought Usyk at 220 pounds, might be bigger and stronger, but Paul's team feels like they can manage the size difference just fine. They also see AJ's age as a possible edge, calling him long in the tooth, and pointing out that Jake, who's only had 13 pro fights and 1 amateur bout, is improving rapidly.
So power is obviously the last thing to go. So obviously AJ has a ton of power and he's still fairly young. Mike Tyson, much more vicious of a knockout artist than Anthony Joshua, much older than AJ, but that was a risk that Jake was willing to take. Francis Ngannou, amazing MMA fighter, very powerful man, not an experienced boxer, right? A lot less experienced than Jake Paul. So if people were comfortable with Francis getting in there with AJ, Jake, who is now 13 fights in, plus 1 amateur fight, a lot less than AJ, but much more than Francis Ngannou, I think we're very comfortable with it. Ultimately, it's not a fight that I want Jake to do, it's a fight that Jake wants to do. And that's a discussion we've had at length, and he feels very confident about where he is in his career and his chances of upsetting Anthony Joshua.
While most fans and experts see this as a crazy mismatch, Jake and his team see it as a once-in-a-lifetime chance to prove the doubters wrong. Paul has said very clearly that if he knocks out Joshua, he'll go down in history forever, and he genuinely seems to believe it.
But here's the thing. I want to fight Anthony Joshua exclusive because I know that I will beat Anthony Joshua's. I know I will
just got
beat,
knocked out, right?
Yeah, Yeah, he doesn't have a chin, and he has no skill, and he's stiff. And I love you, Anthony. We're friends. All this, but I want to fight you. I will beat Canelo. I will beat a lot of people. I will not beat David Benavidez.
It's not even close.
I would get torn up, bro. This guy is different.
Bro,
He's different.
I've never you glazing, bro.
No,
Holy
this is authenticity, bro.
I'll glaze, bro. But I'm real. I'm the realest in the game.
Still, not everyone is excited about the idea. Anthony Joshua's own trainer, Ben Davison, didn't hold back when asked about the potential fight. He flat out called it a serious risk for Joshua. Davison said that there's no real reason for Joshua to take on someone like Jake Paul, not from a sporting point of view. It's a fight that could go horribly wrong if something unexpected happens, and even if AJ wins, there's no real benefit to his legacy. He believes it's more about money than sport and said Joshua is still committed and sharp, but this fight just doesn't make sense.
I think AJ's not overly interested in that sort of stuff. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know. I don't make decisions for him. Do you know what I mean? But
We spoke to Jake Paul last week at Wembley. He said the fight's happening. Eddie Hearn said it's all right him saying that, but obviously things have got to be right, etc. So it must have been discussed in some sort of capacity.
yeah, I think this conversation's been had with a few people, like Turkey and that, and Jake Paul obviously discussed it and whatnot. But Eddie will know more than me. I don't know too much about it, to be honest.
But if that is the case, it's just business as usual. You'll be involved in preparing for whatever, if it is the case.
Yeah, look, like I say, I've said this over and over with the AJ stuff. The land can change and very, very quickly. Opportunities open up, and so yeah.
However, it seems like the money might be too good to ignore. Eddie Hearn, Joshua's longtime promoter, admitted the idea is on the table. Hearn said that although the focus is still on making a fight between Joshua and Tyson Fury, they need an interim opponent. If that opponent happens to be Jake Paul, then so be it, especially if the money is right.
I think the fight's a mismatch. I think AJ destroys him, but if Jake Paul wants this fight and he's serious, the fight will happen.
Where?
But-
Oh, go on.
No, but I mean that's it. You know, I think Nikisa. This really comes down to Jake. His belief stroke delusion of he truly believes he can beat AJ. Truly, and I truly believe he believes that.
Hearn doesn't think it's a competitive fight and said flat out that Jake would probably get flattened fast, but at the same time, he acknowledged the insane amount of attention and money such a fight could pull in. He also mentioned that His Excellency, likely referring to Turki Al-Sheikh, expressed serious interest in making it happen.
Probably, yeah. Again, look, there's so much to discuss with those guys, and I'm not going to go too deeply into the points, but I would think US is the most likely destination.
Not Saudi or the UK?
Depends. You know, I mean, look, from our side, obviously, we've got a great relationship with His Excellency. AJ's had the last few fights with him. We're happy to continue doing that. But, you know, there haven't been any conversations, deep conversations with myself and His Excellency about a date or the numbers or anything like that. That will probably come. But this was more of a direct conversation between the two teams to say, look, like the first thing is, are you serious about this? And it's like, yeah, not just serious. This is what we think about the terms of the fight. What do you think?
Al-Sheikh, who's been a major figure in recent boxing events, said he sees value in this fight either way. If Joshua destroys Jake Paul, it'll finally shut the door on Paul's hype. If Jake wins, it'll prove that he deserves to be taken seriously.
What Jake Paul doing in boxing. It's good for boxing to have young generation. I am against some kinds of fight he do. I want to tell you example and surprise. I am thinking me and him to doing him against Joshua now. Joshua, if he destroy him, it will be good for me. The headache of Jake Paul will go from my mind. If Jake Paul win, I will know that Joshua is finished. And Jake Paul deserve to be ranking and deserve to have future in boxing, right? I don't want it 50-50. In this situation, I wanted 99-1.
According to Al Sheikh, Jake has already accepted the challenge, and next he's going to talk to Joshua.
I wanted 99-1. Jack Paul accepted.
Paul, fresh off a win against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., is clearly feeling himself. After that fight, he called out Joshua again and promised that if he knocks him out, it'll be historic. For Jake, this is more than just a fight. It's a shot at boxing immortality.
Now, I know you're after a world title, but if that doesn't materialize, I know the Tommy Fury name has been floated about. Is there any other fighters who may not be world champions that you're looking to face?
Yeah, I mean, Anthony Joshua.
I think that's the main one that, we've talked a lot about is if it's not for the title, it's looking at Tommy, if he's reasonable, and then Anthony Joshua. And he's adamant that he wants to make that fight happen at the end of 2026.
Anything's possible. And so I like the challenge. People, that's the criticism. Fight someone in their prime who's a beast. I think people just want to see me lose. That's really what the message is behind it all. And Anthony Joshua is an insane fight, but I want that challenge.
Confirming a possible date for early 2026, Jake Paul has claimed that Anthony Joshua has been messaging him directly, suggesting that Joshua himself is interested in making the fight happen. This comes as a surprise twist, especially since Joshua's own team has been calling the matchup a clear mismatch. While they see the fight as unnecessary and risky, Jake says the direct communication from Joshua shows the former heavyweight champ is actually on board, and not as opposed to the idea as his team suggests.
We've been DMing back and forth. He wants to make it happen. He called me up, and it's looking very likely for next year.
But there's plenty of backlash too. Former Olympic gold medalist and heavyweight contender Tony Yoka couldn't believe the fight is being discussed at all. He said Joshua doesn't need the money and that he's still a top-level heavyweight. Yoka, clearly frustrated, questioned why Joshua would even consider something like this instead of focusing on more serious opponents.
Like, I can't believe it. You can't make me believe that Anthony Joshua is going to fight Jake Paul. Like, why? Nah, man, it's not like he doesn't need money. Joshua doesn't need money. He's the fighter who makes the most money in boxing. Like, he's the heavyweights. Everybody knows that he's the one, If you tell me Mike Tyson's going to fight Jake Paul, okay, I get it. He's old. Maybe you want to make some money. Maybe you want just to come back, and to fight again. But Anthony Joshua is still good for a heavyweight. I think he's like 35, 36 years old.
Yep.
You can't tell me he's going to fight Jake Paul. Like what's the point? There's no way he's going to fight Jake Paul. Nah, I can't believe in it.
Yoka even threw his own name into the conversation, saying he's a better option and that fans would be shocked at what he could do against AJ. He feels like the fight with Paul is just a circus and not something boxing needs right now.
I guess we gotta wait to see it, I guess you gotta call them, tell them that you want to see this fight, because I think it's gonna be a really, really interesting match. Most of the people that are in boxing, some of them doesn't know me, and I can swear to you 100% of people will be shocked that night.
So you fully believe you can beat
Anthony
Joshua?
Yeah. I'm telling you, I know my place is up there. All I need is, okay, Tony, you got this fight, let's go. Go.
Former world champion Johnny Nelson also weighed in. He doesn't believe the fight is truly going to happen, at least not anytime soon. Nelson said Jake would probably have to wait until Joshua is about 45 before the matchup becomes realistic. Nelson doesn't think Paul was even serious when he dropped AJ's name, but he understands why he did it, because just saying Joshua's name in the same sentence helps boost Jake's profile. He sees Jake as a brilliant self-promoter and someone who's showing others how to succeed in boxing without taking the traditional path.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so, did he mention any other name? Because usually the last name they mention, they end up fighting.
Well, he hasn't mentioned any other names, but we've seen in the last 48 hours, Jake Paul did a podcast and, said he'll knock out Anthony Joshua. Then, by the looks of it, he got a phone call from AJ. And then I think AJ put something up the other day on his story saying that Mike Tyson did it. So, what would...
Yeah, there's a big difference there. I think I might be wrong, but don't get sucked in by it's great publicity and it's great talking material, but in reality, if Jake Paul is that delusional and that stupid, to get him with AJ, to seriously think I can deal with this, well, let him do it. You know, get a lot of money for getting knocked at 5-0 out.
At the same time, Nelson admits that Jake Paul can fight. He sees him as a decent domestic level fighter who just happens to have world champ level money. And because of that, guys like Mike Tyson and maybe even Anthony Joshua will take the payday to fight him. He said, "That said, I do think Jake Paul can actually fight," Nelson said. "He's a good domestic fighter, but he's got world championship money." With that, people like Mike Tyson will get in the ring with him because they know they'll get paid handsomely. He's capitalized on the business side of boxing, and you can't really knock him for that. Jake Paul didn't come up through the ranks like most fighters. He wasn't in the gym since he was a kid. He didn't go through the amateur system. Instead, he built a massive following online and then used that to get into boxing. That fan base gave him a shortcut to fights with big names. Older guys past their prime, but still popular. And now, because of his business savvy and the attention he brings, Paul is on the verge of stepping into the ring with one of the most successful British heavyweights of all time.
I kid you not, I am now more swinging to it happens than it don't happen. After I spoke to Jake Paul on Saturday, and he looked at me like, obviously, like he gave me a look, you know, like, duh, what kind of stupid question is this? And I was like, huh? I heard that AJ was there, by the way.
Really?
This is what I heard. I can't confirm it, but someone told me AJ was there. Quite a few important people went into a back room.
Right, look.
I'm not saying who was in that, but I'm not saying who was in the back room.
Okay.
I'm saying quite a few important people.
AJ nearly did it to Francis Ngannou.
Yeah.
I mean, that knockout was chilling. That was Ngannou. Ngannou is 6'5" and 200, 300 pounds of muscle.
Yeah. Mass strength. A guy that's used to being kicked in the head with shins.
While most experts think it's a mismatch and a publicity stunt, the truth is, people are talking. The world wants to see what would happen if the YouTuber turned fighter actually squared off against a real heavyweight world champ. Whether it's about money, spectacle, or legacy, Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua could become one of the biggest, wildest fights in boxing history.
This is another level. This is a really dangerous. He ain't fighting a granddad. He isn't fighting a grandfather. It's absolute lunacy. It's insane. It's dangerously insane. Is right. And I never thought I'd say that in my lifetime, but because he says some crazy. But he probably could knock him out with his bell end.
Even though the critics are loud, the buzz is real, and if the stars align, with Joshua healed up, Paul still on his winning streak, and the right money on the table, don't be surprised if this $200 million fight actually happens at Wembley, with the whole world watching. What do you think? And is Jake Paul really ready for Anthony Joshua? Or is this just hype? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, hit that like button, and don't forget to share this with your boxing buddies. Make sure to subscribe to Ring Rivalry for all the latest updates, fight breakdowns, and behind the scenes scoops on the biggest events in boxing.